Ladies and gentlemen of the Action Army, what is going on? And welcome to another episode of Answers for Athletes. In today's video, we are talking about the 10 key performance qualities of vertical jump according to the Vertical Jump Development Bible. So recently I made a video on the 9 essentials of an explosive vertical jump. That was according to the jump manual. So I do think it is very important to take information to learn from many different trainers, many different coaches, many different books, many different resources. And then once you have all of that information, you can put it all together, lay it all out on the table, and then come to your own conclusion as to what you think is best. So today, we have the 10 key performance qualities of vertical jump according to the Vertical Jump Development Bible. I do also want to say that if you're interested in learning about everything there is to know about vertical jump, my videos are going to be great, of course. However, the Vertical Jump Development Bible is a free PDF. You could just Google it, and it is not only free, but it is extremely extensive. There is tons of information packed in here. So if you're a trainer, a coach, an athlete who wants to learn more about what it takes to really get and develop a high vertical jump, this is going to be a great resource for you. So let's get into it. 10 key performance qualities of vertical jump. And these do start from a bit more basic and then they get more juicy as we go down through the 10 qualities. And by the way, as always, comment JUMP, J-U-M-P, down below in the comment section for a free bodyweight vertical jump training program. It's completely free. I will take you to the next level. And then if you're interested in my advanced training programs, those will really take you to the next level. Link in the description and the pinned comment. Here we go. Number 1, he says, is control and stability. And he does give a caveat. He says, keep in mind that none of these qualities or training methods exist completely in isolation, yet they are all important. So all 10 of these are going to all be working at the same time. And the more of these that you can develop, the higher your vertical jump is going to be. So number 1 is control and stability. And he says, obviously, before you can develop maximum power, strength, speed, or anything else, you need to be able to stabilize and control your own body weight and control minimal loads. Control and stability is related to coordination in learning, and when it comes to a new skill or movement, this should be the initial focus. So there's a couple things here. Number 1, if you're a beginner, which most of you aren't beginners, but some of you are. We were all a beginner at one time. You should start with body weight. Body weight training is going to be excellent to develop your general levels of strength, your stability, your balance, your control, your understanding of your body and how to move correctly. So body weight training is going to be very important. And then the second thing is minimal loads, learning control and stability. You're going to really want to use those minimal loads to learn the movement patterns of everything to start. So just think about, well, I guess I'll let you know the hardest movement patterns for me to teach athletes for some reason are kettlebell swings and RDLs. They're post-chain movements. Sometimes the squat can be tough, people, squatting to knee dominant and not actually sitting back into the squat. So you never want to go too heavy, too fast. You want to master your body weight first, and then you want to use lighter loads to improve that control and stability. So 100% agree there. As I said, he starts kind of basic and then moves on and gets more juicy as we go on. So let's move on. Number 2 is general strength. The goal here is to strengthen the muscles involved by adding additional loading. An emphasis should be placed on correct technique with less emphasis on the load. So this kind of goes hand in hand with control and stability. You want to just get some general strength. That's why a prep phase, a build the base phase, a foundation phase is super important, especially for beginners, because they need to develop that general strength. And I'll give you a quick example. I have a new freshman on my high school basketball team. And he's 6'3", maybe 6'4", the longest limbs that I've ever seen on a 14-year-old. And he wears size 17 shoes. I literally looked at his feet and I was like, dude, what size shoe you wear? He was like, 17. And I'm like, how old are you? 14. I'm like, man, you're going to be a large human being. However, he couldn't even, well, he couldn't bench 2.5s for 10 reps, but he could get the bar. He could bench the bar for 10 reps. And then when he was benching the bar, it was all over the place because he hasn't built that stability and control. He hasn't built that general strength yet. So the other kids are like, Coach, he's really benching the bar. And I'm like, we all have to start somewhere. I don't want him benching any more weight than that. I want him to get the correct movement patterns with just the bar. I want him to develop general strength with just the bar. And then we moved on to, and it moved up quickly because part of it is technique. Part of it is general strength. But then we added 2.5s on each side, and then 5s, and then 7.5, and then 10s, and all the way up until right now, he can do 25s on each side, and he's building that general strength, and he has built the control and stability. So for all of you out there, these are the two basic qualities. If you don't have control and stability and you don't have general strength locked in, then you can't go and develop maximum power, maximum strength, maximum velocity. So I think all of you know that. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. Number 3 is range of motion. And I really love what he says about flexibility because I agree wholeheartedly. Range of motion is also known as flexibility. You need to have a certain degree of flexibility in order to prevent injury and optimally carry out the movements in your sport. In the vertical jump, if your ankles and calves are so tight that you can't achieve the desired range of motion, then you risk serious injury. On the other hand, it's not necessary and could in fact be detrimental to have the flexibility of a contortionist. It is essential that a minimal amount of flexibility be maintained, yet flexibility training will not do miracles. So I'm telling you guys, when you do yoga, some people say, I did hot yoga or I did yoga and my bounce went through the roof. It is more likely due to them achieving minimal levels of flexibility and mobility and increasing their body control and their general strength and their stability. That is probably, and most of the time, for advanced athletes, yoga is not going to take you through the roof. You already have those things developed. But for a beginner, yoga can actually really increase your vertical jump for somebody who hasn't already developed those qualities. But you don't need to do the splits, but you do need to have a minimal level of flexibility and mobility. And a good example of this very quickly is when I sprained my ankle, my left ankle dorsiflexion became horrible. And all of a sudden, because it was horrible, I was playing basketball and I was getting into these deep positions, cutting and crossing over, in these deep angles of these deep shin angles while I was playing basketball. And all of a sudden, I started to get some small nagging knee pain on my left knee. And that's likely because I didn't have the proper mobility in my left ankle. So that force, that load had to move up the chain to the next joint, which was my knee. And therefore, I started to get a little bit of knee pain. So you do need to have minimal levels of flexibility, but you don't need to be able to, do the splits. You don't need crazy amounts of flexibility. That will likely not improve your vertical jump as much as some people say it will. Number 4 is maximum strength. Now we're getting into the juicy stuff. So number 1, control and stability. Number 2, general strength. Number 3, range of motion or flexibility. And number 4, maximum strength. Here, the focus is on strengthening the musculature by lifting maximum loads. This greatly enhances a muscle's maximum force output. So we talk about this all the time. You need to improve the amount of force that you can produce. And by improving the amount of force that you can produce, you therefore improve your potential to improve your power later on when you do power and velocity-based training. It also helps develop type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers. So maximum strength, I think that we all know that one. If you get stronger, it is likely that you are going to have the potential to jump higher. But keep in mind, if you're doing heavy, slow strength all the time and expecting that to increase your vertical jump without doing power and velocity-based training and plyometrics, you're likely just going to get very slow. So that is number 4, maximum strength, increasing the maximum amount of force that your body is able to produce. Number 5, maximum power. He says Power equals force times velocity. That is a combination of strength and speed. Virtually any type of training can qualify as power training as long as there's some load that must be moved and you focus on moving that load fast. So that's very important. He says that anything can be considered power training as long as there is some added load and you are focused on moving that load fast. So with the force velocity curve, we think of power as 30 to 80% of your 1 rep max. That is true, but what is also true is any added load moving quickly can be considered power training. So he says you can train for power using your body weight with an additional load, lifting light loads, or attempting to move a heavy load quickly. Maximum strength training, due to its inherent slower movement speeds, may not produce a lot of power during its execution, yet it will boost your strength levels, and that will enable you to put out more force, which translates into more power. So if you improve your maximum strength, you do improve your ability and your potential to therefore improve your maximum power. That is true. And we could dive into that, and I could try to pick that apart, but I think maybe that's for another video. Don't want to go down that rabbit hole, so we will just move on. So number 5 is maximum power. So we got control and stability, general strength, range of motion or flexibility, maximum strength, and then maximum power. Remember, these are the 10 keys to an explosive vertical jump according to the Vertical Jump Development Bible. Number 6 is starting strength. I think this one is very important and very underrated, and I don't think this was present in the 9 essentials of an explosive vertical jump. It might have been, but I can't remember. Number 6, starting strength. Starting strength is the ability to instantly apply lots of force at the very beginning of a movement. Just like any other strength quality, this can be trained and improved. Your muscles can be trained to fire quicker. So as we talked about, the ability to produce a lot of force does nothing for your vertical jump if you cannot produce that force quickly. That's why training very heavy needs to be paired with power training and velocity-based training and plyometrics. If you just do a bunch of heavy strength work, you're just going to get slow. So starting strength is the ability to fire your muscles very, very quickly. And how I like to use this with my athletes, so you can do plyometrics, you can improve your rate of force development in many ways, but starting strength, I like to stand behind the athlete and we'll do a box squat, and it can't be super heavy because you don't want them resting on the box until you say go with super heavy loads. But let's say we use 30 to 40 to 50% of our 1 rep max, and I have them sit down on the box, and then I'm behind them and I will say go. And as soon as they hear go, they explode up as fast as they can. So they can't see me. It's an auditory cue. Sometimes we'll use the training app. It's called Switched On, and you can set the screen to flash from green to red to yellow, and whenever it turns green, it's a visual cue. They immediately explode up. But there's many different ways that you can do this to improve your starting strength. But that is a good thing for you to add in, because your ability to turn those muscles on and explode up into that squat as quickly as possible, that is only going to help. So the more that you develop your starting strength, the better. That is number 6. Number 7 is force absorption training. This is the ability to absorb and stabilize high eccentric or negative forces, and this is the first step in developing great plyometric power. One of the programs that I reviewed had hurdle jumps the first day, and I bashed on it because you should not be doing hurdle jumps on day 1 of a vertical jump training program. It's just too intense. You haven't built up, like let's say a beginner gets into your program. They haven't built the control and stability. They haven't built the general strength. They haven't built the force absorption needed to go and then do a hurdle jump without getting injury, knee pain, whatever they're going to get. So force absorption training is often overlooked in certain vertical jump programs, and when people coach people or when you do your own training yourself, force absorption training. And even right after you come out of season, in your postseason, after the championship and all that, when basketball's over and you're beginning the off season, a quick 2-week phase of a build the base phase or a prep phase where you're working on your control and your stability, your general strength, your force absorption training, especially if you neglected training in season, is a great idea. So he goes on to say, these movements create a lot of force as the negative movement or eccentric causes your muscles and tendons to stretch, which creates a gathering of energy. The forces you gather are then stored in the tendons and muscles, causing your tendons to act like a stretched rubber band. In order to excel at this, you first need good levels of basic strength along with muscular control. So control and stability plus, basic strength, general strength. Being able to absorb energy is a prerequisite to the next step, which is reactive training. So a hurdle jump would be considered reactive training. You shouldn't do reactive training if you haven't done force absorption training first. Teach your body to absorb the forces that you're going to be receiving from getting a higher vertical jump. So everybody wants to work on increasing their vertical jump, but everybody wants to just dismiss the fact that we need to also learn how to land from that increased vertical jump and absorb the forces that come from getting more athletic. So force absorption training, 100% agree there, definitely overlooked. Next one, number 8, is reactive training. This is the result of being able to release lots of stored energy after you absorb it. Reactive training is also known as plyometric training, reversal strength, elastic strength, and static spring proficiency. They all essentially mean the same thing. Reactive training can account for a significant part of performance in any athletic endeavor. And by significant, I'm not sure what he means, but I will say by significant part of performance, reactive training is going to be most of it. It's going to be most of it. You have to be doing reactive training if you want your vertical jump to be as explosive as possible. Now, you can't do reactive training until you have checked all these other boxes of control and stability, of general strength, and of force absorption training. And then some maximal strength and some power can go along with reactive training. But he goes on to say, this strength quality is also highly trainable. Certain drills allow you to increase both energy absorption ability and reactive ability. Together, they make up plyometric training. So reactive training, you can think of as, hitting the ground and focusing on minimal ground contact times. So depth jumps can be reactive training, but drop jumps are even more reactive than depth jumps because it's more of a minimal ground contact time. You have your single leg hops, you have your hurdle jumps, your single leg bounds, single leg depth jumps, you have your repeated box jumps. These are all reactive training, and these are going to be essential for you to increase your vertical jump as much as possible, especially if you are a 1-foot jumper. Reactive training is going to be very important for you because in a 2-foot jump, you have more ground contact time. You use more power than a 1-foot jump. A 1-foot jumper, most of the time, is not as deep knee angles. It's a quicker ground contact. So those single leg hops and single leg bounds and single leg depth jumps and the minimal ground contact time is really going to help transfer to that single leg bounce because of those shorter ground contact times, and it's just going to have a higher transfer of training. So that is number 8. Reactive training is one of the 10 key performance qualities of a high vertical jump. Number 9, short response reactive training. So we just talked about reactive training. Now we have short response reactive training. And everything that I just said, we could probably pair that into, some of those are going to be reactive. Some of those are going to be short response reactive training. It really depends on the ground contact time. But he says this type of training differs from regular reactive training in that the switch from down to up happens a lot quicker, and is nearly completely reflexive with little voluntary input. For example, look at the difference in the time that you spend changing direction from down to up in a vertical jump versus the time that your foot spends on the ground during a max speed sprint. Sprinting is the ultimate display of reactive or plyometric training. So really, sprinting is the most plyometric of the plyometrics. It is the most reactive. It is the best thing that you could do for reactive strength is sprints and velocity, et cetera, et cetera. He goes on to say, in much the same way, executing a unilateral one-leg jump after a run-up, so basically just a single-leg approach, jumping off one foot, also qualifies as a short response reactive activity because the movement occurs much faster than a regular 2-foot vertical jump. So that's very similar to reactive training. It's just the same thing, except the responses, the ground contacts are going to be much slower and most of the time involuntary. You don't think about, so when you do a depth jump or a drop jump, you might think about minimal ground contact time. But when you do a sprint, you're not thinking about minimal ground contact time. You're just thinking about sprinting as fast as possible. So a lot of the time they are involuntary and it is as reactive as possible. Number 10, this is the last one. Speed of movement / quickness / velocity. He says, when you increase the force and the power behind your movements, aka maximum power and maximum strength, when you increase the force and power behind your movements and then you increase the absolute speed at which you can move, you get the best of both worlds. Maximum strength and maximum power will mainly increase the horsepower behind your movements, but when you combine that with an increase in absolute speed, your results will be far superior. So, as I've been saying this entire video, you need that base foundation of strength. You need to be able to produce a lot of force. You need to be able to produce a lot of power, but then velocity-based movements, plyometrics, sprints, these things are going to be so important to tie it all together. Okay, so you can't ever just let yourself get into a bunch of slow, heavy stuff without doing the quickness, the velocity stuff. You can even go through a strength phase or a power phase, but there should always be some sort of maximum velocity movement added in because that is how we tie it all together. The ability to produce a lot of force means nothing for a vertical jump if you cannot produce that force quickly. So, guys, I was just doing a little bit of studying here, rereading the Vertical Jump Development Bible, and I came across the 10 key performance qualities of vertical jump, and I figured I would make a video on this so that all of you could hear what these are and maybe understand if you are lacking in one of these 10 key performance qualities. But as always, leave your question down below if you want me to answer your question in a video just like this. Comment jump for that free program. And then if you are interested in my advanced training programs, we have Beyond the Rim Strong and Bouncy, which is for athletes who they played basketball, maybe they've done some plyometrics, but they really need to take their strength to the next level. That will really help you increase your bounce. We have Beyond the Rim Project Plyo, which is for those athletes who are really strong. Maybe you've lifted weights for a while, but you're still not bouncy. Beyond the Rim Project Plyo will take your vertical jump to the next level. Beyond the Rim 2 is a mixture of the two. It's about 50% plyos and 50% strength. Then we have Beyond the Rim 3. We have Beyond the Rim Short on Time, Beyond the Rim in season. We have Upper Body Athlete 2 and 3, Upper Body Athlete in season. We have Indestructible Knees. We have all the programs that you need to go to the next level. So if you want to take all the guesswork out of it, I've completely programmed and periodized everything for you and added them to those programs to take you to the absolute next level. Without further ado, I love you all, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.